It's time now for Uncancelled. And this is where Britain's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of the cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. With a new Unheard poll showing that only 20% of Brits disagree with the statement immigration levels are too high, it's fair to say the nation's had enough of both illegal and legal migration, including over 2,500 new arrivals on small boats across the Channel in the last 2 months alone. Protests have broken out across the country as local communities are torn apart. But rather than listening to their understandable concerns, the MSM wants to brand them far right. And it happened again over the weekend, with the hard left commentator Lewis Goodall of LBC tweeting huge police presence on outskirts of Rotherham for far-right protest and counter-protest outside a Holiday Inn Express housing asylum seekers. We understand it's one of 5 such far-right events organised for this weekend. Now, Kelvin MacKenzie, why are people like Lewis Goodall, who actually should be representing very real concerns from his listeners, why does he just want to paint all of the people protesting as far right?
Because it's an easy conversation to have, isn't it? Once you say far right, it summons up a picture of Hitler or something like that. What nobody will take into account, remember, all these guys are from the left, and LBC, by the way, the Labour Broadcasting Company.
I love that.
It's a shocking outcome. What about James O'Brien, by the way, sending his kids off to private school, but talking about, isn't it disgusting, the state of education in Britain today? Anyway,
hypocrite in chief.
Lady, yes, James O'Brien.
Champagne socialist in chief.
Exactly. Trousering a fortune off his company, which I basically approve of, I think. But on the question of why is anybody who has a problem in their heart and in their street and perhaps in their work and also worrying about their children's future and God knows what else, why is it that they have to be far right? All they are ordinary people concerned about their lives. And Labour, of course, don't know what to say. So Starmer actually is too clever to get involved in that migration area. And he will talk in exactly the same way as Sunak talked and Boris talked. He will talk about, I'm going to solve this. He is not going to solve this unless he wants to do something really quite tough and outside the norm of politics. Now, that's the question. Will anybody do anything? Now, what would Nigel do? You see, even Nigel
Farage
is not prepared to actually say, I tell you what, the only thing that the smugglers understand is violence. Why don't we just pursue them, right? When Israel has a problem on the West Bank or in Palestine, fine, they take some of it and then they go in. They don't worry about what the world thinks.
But what do you mean by violence?
I'm always saying the same thing. I'm saying the same thing. We should send our SAS or whatever to go in there secretly and take them out.
Treat it like war.
Yeah, it is a war for us, isn't it?
It's an invasion.
We have 150,000 waiting. We have schools which can't cope. We have hospitals. I was in a hospital the other day. The doctor, the working conditions of the doctor were beyond shocking. By the way, it's St Peter's in kind of on the Weybridge borders. You would have thought it would be in good nick. It was shocking. The fact the doctor worked in it. So why is it
the junior doctors in a moment? But the thing is, Kelvin, though, surely there is a political step before that, though, which is leaving the ECHR, and Sunak and Starmer don't have the balls to do that either.
Nobody will do anything. Nobody will do anything.
Farage would do that. Braverman would do that. There are other
even if we did that, would that be enough? Would that actually solve the problem?
I think it would be a start.
Yes, it would be a start, but it's not going to stop the smugglers. If you're making £100,000 a boat,
but if they know, the folks stop paying the money if they know they are never going to end up on British soil, if they know there's going to be offshore.
But what happens when they arrive here? What are we going to do? Put them back in the boat and send them back again?
They've got to be
drop them off and drop them off in France.
Worked in Australia. Well, no, process them offshore. That is
where is offshore to you?
Well, in one of our territories, there's talk of potentially turning one of our islands into a processing centre like they did with Australia.
What, the Isle of Wight?
No, further afield. But then there are also the schemes like the Rwanda scheme, which obviously can't happen with
only taking out in a violent way the smugglers who are making the money is ever going to solve.
Treating them as a terrorist organisation.
They are, by the way, hugely clever. You know, allegedly fooling the whole of the French police and the French army, right? It doesn't matter. We either do that or I'm afraid 10 years from today, that 150,000 number, that will be 400,000 or 500,000.
And then you're potentially looking at a political revolution. But look, we're going to stay on this, but I do want to talk about the junior doctors. I know you're very worked up about this. They voted to strike, an overwhelming 97% vote. This walkout could start in March. As many as 45,000 turning their back on patients. 72 hours, Kelvin.
I know. No A&E, by the way. No intensive care. I mean, really, there is a thing called a Hippocratic Oath, and they are doing harm to the patients. Their money, right, ran about 58,000, OK, after about 5 years, right? OK, not fantastic. By the way, 37% if you work at the weekends. If they work 8 hours over, they get 20% more money than their daily rate. Honestly, I'm not saying that they shouldn't be well paid. I want them to be well paid. I say they are already being at least adequately paid. And what I can't understand is what kind of person becomes a doctor and then says, I tell you what, there's a bomb gone off, right, and there's a load of people going into an A&E. Are we really going to stand aside? Or smaller, a small car crash, right, in which one person's dead, one person's just about hanging on? Are they saying, I tell you what, we're not doing that one. It has to be a bomb to do it. These are shocking judgments from massively intelligent people. They know what they're doing. They are taking somebody else's pain to increase their pay. I really hate them for it, to be honest. I hate the whole of the NHS. The NHS, it looks to me as though I have no idea why we don't get some of those American hospital companies come in here and offer some competition, because as a state monopoly, it is not working. It's not working for the customer, the patient. It's definitely not working, allegedly, for the doctors, the nurses, the ambulance driver. Nobody's working. Why don't we bring competition into it? I think pay would probably go up and people would feel happier.
It would. I mean, great piece that I really recommend people check out by Trevor Kavanagh in The Sun today about the Australian health system. Yep. I discovered it myself over Christmas when I had to go to the doctors there. Works brilliantly, you know, it works brilliantly. And there are other models that work, and everyone's happy.
And everybody's worried about, right, if you are poor, you are skint, you're covered.
You're covered.
If you're old and you've got a problem, you're covered.
Totally.
It's in the middle, and it's in the middle that aren't being treated. Try calling it. They try their best. I went to a hospital the other day. The conditions the doctor, the GP was working in were beyond shocking. And do you know what he said? I apologise. He said, the heating's not working, right? This was in the hospital. It was like -5. And I said, don't worry. I said, I'm used to travelling by SWR trains, so you don't need to worry. Honestly.
Kelvin MacKenzie, you get back on your train home.